It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
The next skill set that I think you can learn from celebrities is the power of a side hustle.
Yep.
And the reason we think the power of a side hustle is, it cracks me up when I hear this term. Side hustles is something that's probably only been around, 5-7 years that you see that
You're
out there
talking about the term,
Yeah,
side hustle.
hustle.
Yeah, it's a relatively new thing that people say.
Yeah, it's been around forever, guys.
That's right.
When you hear people, like you go watch the Jeffersons, like George Jefferson, he's like, I had 2 or 3 jobs. It's just people I worked 2 or 3 jobs. And, when they talk about they had 2 or 3 jobs, they walked 7 miles in the snow uphill to pay bills and stuff.
Right.
They're talking about all the side hustles because only one of them was their real job. The other things were just the second and third jobs or side hustles that they were doing. And here's what I like about side hustles. Side hustles, when I was thinking about this show, I was thinking about the 3 things that really come from side hustles. They first let you try out endeavors without diving headfirst into it. So you get to actually stick your big toe in and make sure this thing's going to work out.
We always say, we talk about it all the time, for folks who want to go into entrepreneurial endeavors, a side hustle is like your first little foray, your first step, your first toe in the water of seeing if you can actually make it as an entrepreneur, because that's what your side hustle is.
The second thing that a side hustle will do is it'll help dig you out of a tight spot. If you're a person, Bo, you said it, we've done other shows where you either have to spend less money or make more money.
There's
and
only 2 options.
Sometimes you've cut to the bone.
That's right.
You've already cut your expenses down, so you got to go out there and figure out a way to go make more money to get yourself out of that tight spot. And then there's a third category. This is for the people that are doing good things, but they look around and they go, man, I still got some extra. And I don't want to get busy doing nothing, so they go hustle.
That's right.
There's people, I think that you see this. Truthfully, I think anybody that's a billionaire kind of fits into this third category.
Because for all intents and purposes, they could just stop and be okay, but a lot of them don't. We see this with even our clients that reach financial independence. They don't just go lay on the beach sipping Mai Tais because they feel like they can be doing something more, continue to create and generate.
I'll take it a step further. You did a fire episode with one of our associates, Gabe, and all these people blew you up about it. Every fire person I know is still making money through blogging or doing, and now maybe it's because of the people we hang out with. We go to conferences with other social media people, but it does crack me up that I think there's a lot of people, they retire and then they don't want to get busy doing nothing, so they end up doing a side hustle. So that's a powerful thing. We kind of resemble this in some ways, because I know that when I started my first company in 2002, I had lots of time, very few clients, but I had this skill set of reviewing tax returns because I had been doing tax preparation for a number of years. So I went to some local CPA firms and asked, hey, do you need somebody to review tax returns or even prepare tax returns during tax season? They're like, sure. I didn't waste that talent that I had. I made it work. Bo, I know you've had some experience with doing side hustles too. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I think even this podcast, right? Yeah. I mean, even this thing that we get to do, it started as just a passion project. It's a way to educate and get information out there, not really understanding I guess I'll say the enterprise that it's turned into. You know, it started as something kind of on the side. That
started as a passion project that's side hustle that's turned into something with purpose.
Yep. So we were thinking about who's a celebrity that has like a really great illustration of the ability to side hustle and do that. And so here's the quote that this person said. They said, there is no key to success. Be humble, hungry, and be the hardest worker in the room. And so this person actually talked a little bit about what was motivating to them, what kind of kept them moving, kept them going. And I'm going to go and read the other quote while you guys are guessing on who said this. Now, he said, we were living in an efficiency. I guess that's like...
that means a studio apartment.
We're living in efficiency that costs $120 a week. We come home and there's a padlock on the door and an eviction notice. My mom starts bawling. She just started crying and breaking down. Where are we going to live? What are we going to do? This person used that to be the motivation to cause them to say, okay, even though I've had some success, I'm not going to stop there. I am going to side hustle, and I am going to be the hardest worker in the room at all times, always.
I'm sure we have a gazillion people that know this one too.
I've got a few Jay Leno guesses, one Arnold guess, but Jeff is the one who it's not a show unless we mention The Rock twice.
So this is number 2. Now, he looks a little more modern here, but the big thing I liked about this, I actually had Daniel go pull a second photo because I wanted specifically that shirt because he wears it all the time. It's a shirt that says rent due. It is tied into that moment that Bo talked about, that it broke his heart to watch his mom be evicted out of the house, and he just never ever wanted to face that. So he uses the term rent due to be the hardest working person in the room. I think that every person out there, you got to figure out what is the fire that keeps you focused and driven. We did a show that's coming out next week, Bo, on talking about who's successful. And we talked about how it is amazing, especially with entrepreneurs, that a large percentage of entrepreneurs have actually failed at least once before they hit the idea that actually worked for them. So there's always going to be something that works against you. You just have to figure out how to turn that into rocket fuel for your future. Sharing personal things happen. My dad was laid off when I was a teenager. Yep. That has always hung with me, to watch somebody get laid off and see our whole family life change, lose a lot of money, lose company cars, and then it's just it shakes you to your core. You have your own things.
Yeah, growing up as a child, we grew up in like poverty, like living in a trailer, no electricity, no water, poverty, having houses foreclosed on, cars. I think a lot of the reason that I have the drive now to go out there and be successful and do the things that we're doing business-wise is because I remember that, and that's my motivation, that I don't ever want to go back there, and even more than that, I don't want my kids to ever experience that. So it's just a matter of remembering what's that thing that's causing you to keep hustling the way that you do.
This makes me think we need to create a shirt, a swag shirt that says, "The Rock eats sweet potatoes, so I do too." And we could put Bo.
Hey, Reeves, let's put that on the idea board, because that would just fly off the shelves.
So let's move on to the second celebrity, because I do want to go through these a little bit. So read the quote on this one, Bo.
So the second celebrity said, "I always had two incomes. I'd bank one and I would spend one." Now, this is a well-known guy, and I would argue that this was a successful guy, that he could have probably spent all of both incomes and he would have been probably okay, just because he had enough income flowing through.
Well, I thought it was interesting when he said when he started getting traction in his industry in Hollywood, you'll see what it is in a second, he still was working at a Cadillac dealership to make money. And then, has anybody chosen it yet? Because I have even more I want to share on him.
A Tony Robbins, a Will Smith, a Tupac. No one's gotten it yet.
So the thing is, though, so after he lands a huge spot, because he was a fill-in. I'll go ahead and say it. I'll give another clue. Johnny Carson. He was doing a lot of fill-in work for Johnny Carson. So then he lands the actual Tonight Show. And the thing is, you would think that would be enough for him to want to live off of. Because like you said, I've always had two incomes. I'd bank one, I'd spend one. That's very noble. But when you're the Tonight Show host, you're probably feeling pretty good about where things are financially. He says that he still kept going and was booking over 100 comedian sets every year. That's just because he didn't feel comfortable just having one income source.
One person guessed Shaq, and then all of a sudden I just thought about Shaq as the host of The Tonight Show, so that is not right.
Shaq Diesel.
But John and Anna, Misty, Debbie, Sonny, they all got it. The answer is, in fact, Mr. Jay Leno. He was someone who he kept the side hustle going, and he made sure that he saved accordingly.
I think it's interesting. He's known for all the cars because you have Jay's Garage and the TV shows, but he obviously, before he was just rolling in abundance, there was some hungriness that kept him feeling like he needed two jobs. I think that's powerful. The next one, here's another celebrity, kind of interesting. This is one that I was curious, I know who he is, but I was like, would everybody know? And you're like, oh yeah, no, he's like A-list now.
I think he's a big deal, but I'll be curious to see if people get it, because I thought this might be one of the hardest ones on the list.
Well, he's in action movies now, and there's a lot of stuff, but here's what I was impressed by, is that he kind of stumbled into this side hustle that he was in, is that him and another guy were kind of handy and they needed a place to live, so they pooled their resources and basically fixed up a torn down house, lived in it. Well, while they were living in it, somebody came and offered them a bunch of money to move into and buy it out from underneath them. They're like, wait a minute, we could do this while we're broke and hungry. So they started buying more homes, and a lot of them didn't have running water, didn't have utilities necessarily, but they would live in these things, fix them up, sell them for a profit. And then he eventually became very successful in the movie industry, but he is still, even with his success, continued to flip homes. Now it's just they're in much higher price points.
I just think it's hilarious too, because I think about my buddies when we first started out. We were so tight. I probably would have thought, oh, I'm just going to go buy this beater of a house and we'll like rehab it and make it. He would have been awful. That would have been like, so kudos to this guy for actually, we talk about one of the reasons we don't love rental property a ton is because we're not the most handy guys in the world. Yeah. This guy was actually living in it and proving it as he went. That just kind of blows my mind. So we have a few guesses here. Bruce Willis, negative Ghost Rider. Harrison Ford, not.
Actually, he was a carpenter though, so that's a good.
Okay,
that's actually
that is
a good guess.
Okay. Wahlberg, I don't know if he means Mark or Donnie, but either way, it's not right. We have a Matthew McConaughey spelled very interestingly.
All right.
That's not right. Scooter came up with Vanilla Ice. I do think Vanilla Ice does that, but that's not who this is. The person that we are actually.
Yeah.
What action movies has Vanilla Ice been in? That's
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Keep going there. Go ahead.
What a solid plot.
Because this one might be too obscure.
So the actual actor is Jeremy Renner. He plays Hawkeye. He was in the Bourne movies. He was in the Mission Impossible movies. See, I'm nervous I was going to run out of his catalog.
But it's still all kudos to Jeremy for fixing it up, living in a house, humble beginnings, and still keeping that going with a side hustle.